question is from Brian Shane. Looks like the fat lady is sung. With all the comments coming out from Kevin Feige and no announcement at D23, seems that Spidey and the MCU days are over. What really caught my attention, though, is Tom Holland saying in an interview that he's looking forward to continuing on as Spider-Man and that he thinks they can make them better than the MCU ones. What do you think of his comments? Do you think they can be better?
Well, okay, so what he's talking about here is at D23, after Tom Holland left the stage, and look, guys, it was the elephant in the room at D23. Are they going to address Spider-Man? And, initially there were stories had started floating about a deal has been reached, a deal's been reached, and had all these people sending me, John, did you hear the news? Sony and Marvel have made a deal. And I said, really? They have? And you look around and it came from Cosmic Book News. Right, can I just throw in something here, guys? Please.
No.
Never send me anything where the source is Cosmic Book News or We've Got This Covered. Please never, ever, ever take any news story where that comes as a source. Now, let me be clear. That is not to say that those particular outlets can't have great editorial material and have some great insights and put together some fun articles. Not at all. Not at all. I'm not suggesting to the contrary on any of that at all. They can have some great fun editorials, a really enjoyable place to be if you're a fan, blah, blah, blah. All I'm saying is, please never, ever, ever send me a breaking story where the originating source is either We've Got This Covered or Cosmic Book News. Fabulous sites for fans if you liking that stuff for all other types of content, but don't ever send that. Please don't. So anyway, that story quickly got thrown out into the trash that a deal had already been reached. But the big 10,000 pound elephant in the room was, are they going to address Spider-Man? And they didn't. They stayed totally silent on it the entire time, which I honestly thought wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I thought it probably would have behooved them. Look, you had the great High Lord Alan Horn on stage at D23, who is the all-imperial overlord of all things movies at Disney, answering only to Bob Iger, who runs all of Disney corporate. But Alan Horn is the guy when it comes to their movie universes. All of them. That's Alan Horn. I think, without going into a full documentary description of here's how everything with our Spider-Man situation went down, I think it would have been great if at some point he would have at least acknowledged the issue, because that's what everybody in the audience was whispering about. What's going on with Spider-Man? What's going on with Spider-Man? What's going on with Spider-Man? I think it would have behooved him to at least gone, and guys, in Alan Horn's way, there's been a lot of talk about Spider-Man, and all we're going to say right now is we love the Spider-Man character, and we're going to continue working to see if something can get done. But we know the news has disappointed a lot of people, but just know that we also love Spider-Man, and who knows what the future holds. I mean, or just something to acknowledge what everybody in the audience is doing. But like I told you guys, if there was no deal, they're going to keep their lips completely shut. And the most they allowed Tom Holland to say, when Tom Holland was on stage for Onward, for the Pixar film Onward with him and Chris Pratt, the only thing they allowed Tom Holland to say was, as Holland was walking off stage, hey guys, just want to say, I know it's been a crazy week, but I just want to say that I love you all 3,000. And then walked off stage, which I thought was nice. But it kind of had a death knell kind of tone to it. It kind of felt like, well, that's the period at the end of the sentence. So here's what happens. Tom Holland is on stage for Onward, makes that comment, walks off stage at D23, and he sits down and starts and does just a couple of interviews with some of the big outlets, including Fox. Anyway, he said something very interesting. He went on, remember, he's still on the stage left of D23, just not on stage, but off stage left, behind the curtains there. And Tom Holland says this, basically, we've made 5 great movies. It's been 5 amazing years. I've had the time of my life. Who knows what the future holds? But all I know is this, that I'm going to continue playing Spider-Man and having the time of my life. It's going to be so fun, however we choose to do it. The future for Spider-Man will be different, but it will be equally as awesome and amazing, and we'll find new ways to make it even cooler. Last part again. The future for Spider-Man will be different, but it will be equally as awesome and amazing, and we'll find new ways to make it even cooler. Now, these are words from Tom Holland that he said at D23. Rob, one of the things that I'm always trying to point out to people is that when a movie star who has upcoming movies coming out and they're talking about their upcoming movies, what do you expect them to say? Man, my next movie's gonna suck. Of course not. Of course not. So I knew there was no way Tom Holland, keep getting the Tom H's mixed up there. Although we could see Tom Hardy and Tom Holland in a movie together now, but we should never have expected, nor did I ever expect, that Tom Holland was going to go into, while still at D23 in the arena, and go to an interview going like, screw Sony, I hate this, I want to stay in the MCU. Obviously, he wasn't going to say anything like that. Clearly, he wasn't going to say anything like that anyway. But I also didn't expect him to come out and sound so resoundingly positive. Like, he could have just come out and said, hey, the decisions being made are above my pay grade right now about all that, but all I'm going to say is that I love the Spider-Man character. And whichever way it goes, I'm just happy to be Spider-Man. I mean, he could have very easily said that, been very diplomatic about it, but instead he seemed to go the extra mile on it. He said, look, it's going to be different, but it's going to be even cooler than it has been before. And I don't think he needed to say that. That I don't think he needed to say, but he said it. And I'll tell you what, Rob, I agree 1,000% with him. Because I think, again, from my point of view, would I have wanted to see Spider-Man stay in the MCU? Yeah, I would have. I like what the partnership between Sony and Marvel has given us. I like what we've gotten there. But if that's not going to happen, I still feel very safe because they've got a terrific Spider-Man right now in Tom Holland. Again, in my opinion, at any rate, Sony without Disney has made the two best Spider-Man movies, in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man 2. They've also made the worst Spider-Man movies too, let's not forget that. But still, they've made the best Spider-Man movies. And I kind of like the idea, because you know me, Rob, I am not really digging the overcrowded superhero universe where every single street corner 7-Eleven has 5 superheroes on the roof patrolling for crime, where all the superheroes now have nothing special about them whatsoever because there's 50 other guys and girls running around out there with similar power sets that they do and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like the idea of Spider-Man now going into a world again where he's kind of unique. There's not 50 others. Like, that's one scene in Spider-Man Far From Home. It's a great scene, but it kind of speaks to this, where all the kids are sitting around in the hotel watching the news of this Mysterio fighting this creature. It's like, which one's this guy again? Oh, he's kind of like, that's the thing. Now, there's so many of these superpowered beings running around in these collective cinematic universes, and I love the collective cinematic universes. The idea of Spider-Man going back to a world where it's him, maybe a Venom, maybe a Morbius, but there's not 10,000 new superheroes popping up on the news screens every single night. There's something cool about that. Again, I would have chosen to have Sony and Marvel work their deal out and have things stay the way they were. I think they were doing great stuff. But in the absence of that, I think everything Tom Holland said is absolutely correct. I think there's a lot of great potential here. We're going to possibly get to see Spider-Man and Venom together again. That could be really nice. I think there's upside. There's downside, but I think there's upside here, Rob. So I don't know. Rob, you hear these comments from a Tom Holland, and it is now looking like maybe the final nail has been driven, and I still contend when there's time, there's hope. So there's still some hope here that Marvel and Disney, or Disney and Sony could come to something, but it is looking more and more like this thing is now done. All that being said, what's your response to this situation?
Well, look, I've liked Spider-Man's participation in the MCU, but I think you said it well. I mean, Tony Stark's gone. That was really Spider-Man's real connection to the MCU, even the suits. I think, look, just like with comic books characters have their own book. Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, whatever. And then sometimes they might cross over with somebody else. But the world goes on. People, like, I have lots of friends. We don't have our team-ups, except maybe once or twice every couple of years. But I lead my own lives, just like my friends lead their own lives. And so I think it's time for Spider-Man. He needs to grow up. He needs to find who he is in the world. He needs to sort of go off on his own, and he's going to come back to his neighborhood. The Avengers, we're going to see the Eternals. We're going to see Shang-Chi. We're going to see Black Widow. There's not a lot of opportunity for Spider-Man to even work in the MCU now over the next 2 years into Phase 4. So if they do a Spider-Man movie, I don't think the MCU is going to be missed. They have a great opportunity to have Spider-Man get out of high school, go into college. What coming back to the neighborhood, who is he going to be going forward as himself, as his own man? What does a man like Spider-Man do? What does Peter Parker do when your mentor is gone? You have to set out on your own. It's time. I mean, in a way, the father figure, he's moving out of the house and going to college. He's forging his own identity, going off. And I think the idea or the potential for story ideas for Spider-Man is great. It's exactly where he should be. We no longer have to rely on the MCU to provide sort of a backstop to make sure that a Spider-Man story has the extra strength of somebody else behind him. Spider-Man, the training wheels are off. Tom Holland, Spider-Man's got to go off on his own and have his own identity, and that's fine. We're not even going to miss the bigger MCU, because if you have a great Spider-Man story, no one's going to care.
Hey, let me throw this by you. New Spider-Man, whatever it's called,
Spider-Man Homeless.
Spider-Man Homeless. Spectacular Spider-Man. Let's say that's the name of the next one. Spectacular Spider-Man. Sony announced a Spectacular Spider-Man starring Tom Holland. Go back to Into the Spider-Verse. Directed by Lord and Miller. I'm just throwing that out there. They've already got Lord and Miller working on Spider-Man stuff. Imagine that. Spectacular Spider-Man starring Tom Holland, directed by Lord and Miller. How exciting would that be? You know, some people have brought up to me and said, man, how the hell is Kevin Feige going to explain in the MCU Spider-Man suddenly not being there? There's no way. You can't explain that. My counter to that has been this, and Rob, you kind of alluded to this already. What influence has Spider-Man had on the MCU? He had a major connection to Tony Stark. Tony Stark is gone. Everybody else in the MCU has literally spent either minutes or at the most a few hours with Spider-Man. He has not had a tight, solid connection with anybody other than a third-level character in one of my favorites, though, with Happy Hogan. Other than Happy, he doesn't have a direct, hardcore connection to anybody.
Nope.
Where suddenly his absence is going to cause massive confusion in everybody else's stories. I honestly think the MCU will move on without a hiccup. Now, maybe the MCU in some movie mentions the kid or something like that. Whatever happened to the kid? I don't know. He just kind of dropped off the radar. I mean, a little something like that, right? It's not like the ending of Endgame notwithstanding. It's not like, where did Captain America go? Like, it's not like Captain America or Black Widow, who is so intricately connected to everything going on within the very fiber of the MCU. Spider-Man really wasn't that. And on top of all that, he was gone for 5 years as part of the blip. So I don't think it's going to be hard to explain. As far as how do they explain it in the Sony side, again, I don't think it's going to be that hard. I've been going back, Rob, tell me if this is a bad illustration, but I've been going back to recently the whole situation with the Highlander 2 and the Highlander 3. Highlander 2, first of all, Highlander 1, one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. Highlander 2, one of the 3 most god-awful films in the history of cinema. Then they put out Highlander 3, which isn't terrible, actually. I think Mario Van Peebles is in that, actually. Mm-hmm. They put out Highlander 3. It completely pretends Highlander 2 doesn't even exist. You can watch Highlander 3 and you would never know that the Highlander 2 ever existed. And I think they can do that in a way. I mean, there's different ways to go about it, but I think they can do that, and I think they'll be fine. Will it be a little jarring at first? Yes. And again, do I think this whole thing could go terribly wrong? Oh, yeah. This could go south. We could be looking at the next Spider-Man 3. I mean, sure, it could.
All the jazz hands.
I don't think so, because if you really think about what's going on, all of the stories, Thor, Love and Thunder, you're dealing with, again, the cosmic realm. You're dealing with Asgardians. You're dealing with the second Thor. Thor is not somebody who's dealing with New York City. The only Marvel Universe character now that's really based in New York City that we've seen is Doctor Strange. And he's dealing with threats on an entirely different level and realm than Spider-Man's dealing with. Spider-Man's now the man on the ground. He is basically the protector of New York City now. Now, we don't have Daredevil in the MCU yet. We don't have these other street-level characters,
Jessica
Luke
Jones,
Cage, any of those characters.
Fantastic
so Spider-Man, we haven't seen the Fantastic Four, but everything that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing has gone more cosmic. And until you see like the X-Men, who are in upstate New York or something, Shang-Chi will not be dealing with New York City. I don't imagine. It might touch on it. Black Widow is going to be an international film, as we've seen. You've got the Eternals, which again, much bigger than just New York City. So the MCU has now gone, the Avengers now have to defend the Earth. The cosmic threats, whether it's Galactus, whether it's the Celestials, whether it's the Deviants, whatever the hell they're going to do, these stories have moved beyond the New York City realm. So Spider-Man can take care of New York. The threat facing New York, we all know the Avengers are dealing with the cosmic nature of the universe now, because that's what's happened. We've seen 23 of the Infinity Saga films. The universe got much bigger for the MCU. So Spider-Man, I don't think we're going to miss it if he's the only person dealing with New York City. It's going to be understood that these characters, our bigger MCU characters, have bigger fish to fry, either internationally or intergalactically. Yeah. And I don't think it's a problem.
When we left off, too, with Peter being outed as a high schooler, that's a PR nightmare for the Avengers. Endangering a minor. We can get rid of that real quick.
And on top of all that, Chris, you're looking at a situation here where I think they can just very easily move past. We've seen other, movie franchise and television franchise have to do this before. But I just wanted to ask you, you hear these comments from Tom Holland. What do you think about them?
Oh, of course he's going to be positive. He's the most Hufflepuff of a boy I've ever seen in my life. He's being a good actor. He's doing what all of us are supposed to do. And it's kind of like, when you break up with somebody and you see your ex, and you're like, I'm doing great. I'm doing so great. I've lost weight. I got promoted at work. Things have never been better for me, honestly. So thank you for breaking up with me. I'm so good. I feel like that's what's happening here.
Chris, to speak to that, Holland's only contracted for one more movie.
Yeah.
So, his renegotiations are coming up. And as I always say, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And if Sony wants... you think Tom Holland's not going to drive a hard bargain after what they did to him in a very public manner? Mm-hmm. It's like, you pay me triple, son.
Well, exactly. I don't know about triple, but he's going to get paid.
Yeah, he's going to get paid.
Here's the thing. I think he wants to continue playing Spider-Man.
Of course he does.
Absolutely.
And I think Sony wants him as their Spider-Man. And I think they will go on. And the other thing to keep in mind here is this. Sony is clearly not adverse to switching their Spider-Mans.
Yep.
And in as much as we often mock Sony for how many times the Spider-Man's been rebooted, think about this. We had Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. A lot of people love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. We had Andrew Garfield, and while not a lot of people are thrilled with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, most people were very much on board with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. Yeah. Then they rebooted again. What was the result of that? We got Tom Holland as Spider-Man. So in as much as we all lament about them always rebooting, we've ended up with a number of actors in Spider-Man that have each brought something a little bit different to the role that a lot of us have really appreciated. I like all the Spider-Men they have, and if they do replace Tom Holland again sometime in the future, I'm sure they'll do a good job again of going out and getting another person to play a good Spider-Man. But I think Holland wants to continue playing this character. We'll see once they make another movie and how good of an experience that is for everybody. But I think he wants to continue playing the character. I think Sony wants him as that. I think Holland going to get a pay raise because now he's not going to be in a cinematic universe where the studio's got to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. and whatever. And they got a little bit extra cheddar to give his way because now he's their star. Think about that. Mm-hmm. In the MCU, Tom Holland is what? 7th? 8th? On the totem pole? In this Sonyverse, he's king. He is now like that overnight. Tom Holland is going to be the king of a cinematic universe. And there's something to be said for that. Now, look, I don't want to make it sound like at the end of the day, I think this whole thing's gone down is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that Sony and Marvel split up. It's not. I don't think any of us wanted this as our first choice. Me least of all. But it's done. And in reality, I think there can be some very big, valuable silver linings here. I think there's some really good stuff that can come out of this. It's not to say that I think this is overall a good thing, but hey, some good things can come out of it. So question here is, guys, what do you make of what's gone on here all in its entirety and its totality? Do you think this is the best days ahead? Do you think it's nothing but darkness ahead? What do you think about Tom Holland's comments and all that kind of stuff? Let me know what you guys think. Jump down to the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. All right.